Imagine we had a setup like this with a guitar going into an amp and that's mic'd up from some distance away from that. That microphone is going to be picking up the sound of the guitar plus the amp plus the sound of the room, and it might sound like this. But what about if we scooch that microphone right up to that amp? Now we've kind of taken out the room, and all the sound that we're going to be capturing is the sound of the guitar plus the amp, and it might sound like this. Let's imagine we go one step closer and just completely take the amp out of the equation and record just the guitar. It would sound like this. Now, which one of these three scenarios would give us the most flexibility at mixdown? Well, that would be the last example. We can always add the sound of an amp to a dry guitar. I mean, heck, you could even take the output of your recorder, plug that into an amp, and then record the output of that amp, mic it up, and then record that onto a different track. But what about the sound of the room? Absolutely. I mean, it's so easy to drop reverb onto any track and place a track into any environment. So placing a dry guitar through any particular amp and any particular environment is super easy and very, very flexible. But the inverse is nearly impossible. I've seen no knob on any console or anything labeled that says take off reverb, or one that would take off distortion, so that if you want maximum flexibility, think long and hard about what you're actually recording before you actually hit record. Now, an exception to this might be when the marriage of two elements are almost kind of like a sound unto themselves. Examples of this, famous examples of this, would be like a Hammond organ paired with a Leslie cabinet, right? Or maybe a 335 guitar with a Hot Rod Deluxe tube amp. We tend to kind of think of them as a single sound that you wouldn't really mess with. The sound of a 335 through a nice Fender amp, tube amp, just sounds great. Or another favorite of mine is a Gretsch guitar through a Voxer amp. Just, if you're going to set this up, just mic them up nice and close, and then kind of take the room out of the equation. You can always add that afterwards. Now, think about this question when you record your vocals along these lines of isolation. What will you record if you're more than a foot away from the microphone? Not only will you be capturing the vocal, but you'll be capturing the sound of that room as well. In the same vein as the guitar example a moment ago, you probably want to isolate your sound as much by getting right up, on that microphone. You'll have much, much more flexibility later on. So remember that it's much easier to add something to a track rather than taking it away.